Hi, I'm Kat and I play Red. Today we're looking at Theurgy from Ministry of Meeples that's due to launch on Kickstarter this month. This is a prototype, so bear in mind that the finished copy will look much better than this. So, Theurgy describes the practice of rituals, sometimes magical in nature, performed with the intention of invoking the action or evoking the presence of one or more deities, which is what we're going to be doing here with Theurgy, the board game. Theurgy plays 2 to 6 players and takes between 60 to 180 minutes, really depending on the player count. It does have an area control element, so it's better with the higher player counts. In the game, players take on the role of half-forgotten deities, which are represented by the player boards. Each player has a special ability shown on their board here. The aim of the game is to build temples on the boards, and depending on the number of players, depends on the number you need to build. There are also special conditions that lets you build fewer to win. So, in a 5 to 6 player game, if you have a temple in the capital, here, you only need 4. If you've completed your objective card, 5, or just randomly placed 6. At the start of the game, each player begins with an objective card. So, mine here, you must have a temple in each of the fishing villages. If you notice on the board, each of the hexes have a different symbol here, which represents the type of village they are. So in this case, I'd need fishing villages, which are shown here with the fish hook. These are also important when monsters come out, but we'll talk about that in a bit. As I said earlier, each player has an action board. This shows the 4 actions you can take in a turn. You can take any of the 4 actions in your turn, however, you can't play the same action on consecutive turns. So, let's go through and have a look at these actions in detail. The first action is pilgrimage. So, pilgrimage allows you to move your acolytes here and your followers onto different spaces on the board. Acolytes also have other special abilities. So, if I were to move these guys here, my acolyte can preach. So, he can actually convert one of these grey cubes into one of my followers. Now, my deity's special ability is, whenever I take the pilgrimage action, I can preach twice. So, in this case, I'd actually convert 2 cubes. These guys I'm going to keep here for the time being. Acolytes can also fight off monsters. However, we don't have any on the board here. We'll come on to that when we talk about the monsters' actions. The second action on a player's board is to spread the word. This means you can place faith tokens of your colour on the intersections where you have followers. So, I could choose to place it here, here, or just to upset yellow, I might pop one here. These become important later on when we do the test the faith action, which enables us to build temples, which is what you're trying to do here after all. The third action on the player board here is divine intervention. This is actually a multi-part action. The first part of this action allows you to move any monsters you control around the board. Obviously, we don't have any at the moment. Then, the second part of the action allows you to either summon a monster or perform a miracle. You'll start with 3 of these cards in your hand at the beginning of the game. So, let's have a look at the monsters. Monsters, there are always 3 available for you to choose from. So, if I were to take the manticore here, it must be placed on this type of village, and this action happens immediately. So, I can remove one cube from a hex of my choice. So the manticore comes over to my side. I'm now in control of him. So the manticore must go on one of these spaces. So I'm going to place him there and remove a cube from there. The monsters that are left over get a token put on them. When the third token would go on one of these monsters, they're removed from the game and refilled. In the meantime, let's refill this. That's the Hydra. Let's pop the token for that. There. So, now I have a monster on the board. I keep the card in front of me to indicate that they're part of my crew. There are multiple pieces of information on a monster. First, as we said earlier, this is the space, the type of village that the monster must be placed on. Here, this double meeple symbol here shows that the Hydra is a legendary monster. If it's to be fought, it must be thought of by 2 acolytes rather than 1. Then, the action. These can be ongoing or instant, as shown here. Also, the text makes sense, so it's pretty obvious a lot of the time. Some monsters can move. These monsters, sadly, don't have a move ability, but other monsters have this symbol, meaning at the start of your divine intervention turn, you can move any monsters that you control into a neighbouring hex. So, that's the monster part of divine intervention dealt with. The other thing you may do is play miracles. So, you're going to start the game with 3 miracles in your hand. Over the course of the game, you can replace and replenish these. So, if I were to perform a miracle, let's choose this one. Move all cubes of this hex to one or more adjacent hex. So, my acolyte here is going to perform this miracle. So, I can move all cubes onto an adjacent hex. So, rather than upsetting yellow again, let's move those there. Then, as part of my action, I can choose to keep or discard my other miracle cards. So, if I wanted to discard both of these, I'd discard all 3 cards into the discard pile, and I'd draw my hand back up to 3 cards, ready for the next time I decide to perform a miracle. One thing we haven't spoken about is these grey tokens here. These are skeptic tokens and work against you when you're testing faith and trying to build temples. However, if I was to do a divine intervention action on this spot, the skeptic would go. Obviously, if skeptics see monsters appear before them or miracles performed in front of their eyes, they're a little less skeptical and they tend to disappear. The 4th and final action, and realistically the true meat of the game, is the test the faith action. Obviously, each player is going to be doing 1 action per turn, so the board is going to change a lot by the time you get around to being in a position to do this. So, to test the faith, you're going to take the anomaly token from wherever it is and place it on a hex of your choice. So, I choose to test the faith here. So, I actually have 3 faith tokens compared to green's 2. So, the difference is 1. I convert one of green's cubes to one of mine. Blue only has 1 faith token to my 3. So, I get to convert 2 of his tokens. And grey only has the 1. So, again, I get to convert 2 of his. However, the fun thing with Test the Faith is everyone gets to test the faith in a square. So, green has 2 faith tokens to blue's 1. So they would actually get to convert one of blue's squares. Again, green has 2 and grey has 1, so green would convert 1. Once all the conversions have been done on a hex, the player with the most followers on the hex gets to place a temple, which after all is the aim of the game. Now, the interesting thing is, when you test the faith, it doesn't have to be on a hex you're involved with. I could choose, for example, to test the faith here. Now, green only has 1 faith token compared to blue's none, so they would convert 1, and grey's none. So, after everything's been resolved, blue has the most followers. In this case, green's temple now becomes a ruin and is only worth half a point towards that end game goal, and blue gets to build a temple here. So, testing the faith isn't just about building your own temples, it can sometimes be about messing other people up. Not that we endorse that kind of behaviour at all. Now, everyone in this square has heard about the miracle that's happened, and they're telling everyone, but no one believes them because they haven't seen it for themselves. So, every neighbouring village gets a skeptic token. If there are any squares with acolytes or monsters, they don't receive the token. The game is really based on 4 action choices. The first 3 are fairly simple. The testing the faith element is really the meat of the game, and how you're going to build your own temples and destroy other people's temples. However, there will be miracle cards that come up through the game that will allow you to do that. And of course, monsters. Some of these monsters can get really annoying, especially later in the game when everyone is fighting over the capital. After all, a temple in the capital means 1 less to build in order to win the game. We've played this as a 2-player game, and each player starts with a group of acolytes and followers on the board. So there is some player interaction, but really for us this game shone as a 5-player game. Initially our friend was, well, you can just test the faith in the smaller, simple areas and build temples and easily win. However, with more players, the board gets really crowded really quickly, and you're constantly fighting to keep that balance. In our game, 1 player was obviously 1 temple away from winning, at which point everyone attacked her. All the monsters came her way, the miracles were going against her, in an attempt to try and stop her from winning. However, sometimes you just can't beat fate. The art on the monsters is stunning, and every single monster has a different style of artwork with a different token. So I know these are all finished, so we have giants here, centaurs, all of this beautifully illustrated. The deities on the player boards as well are all very distinct with amazing artwork. The miracle cards currently just have a placeholder, but obviously this won't be like that in the finished version. Theurgy is a great mid-weight strategy game. However, be prepared, there will be some player conflict over the course of the game. So, not one if you don't like that sort of thing. We enjoy it and end up name calling, but that's our group, not every group's like that. Theurgy will be coming to Kickstarter in March. Hopefully we'll get the link in the comments below. In the meantime, if you like this video, please click like, subscribe. If there's anything you want to see, let me know. See you next time.